Okay, folks, it is a new week, November 17th, episode 173. And things are heating up. So I'm giving this one a solid 8 out of 10. And we're on the honeymoon. Andre wakes up in bed and looks over to find Danny looking outside. They talk about their honeymoon getting wild. Hopefully, not too wild in terms of a repeat of how they got married in the first place. But they get a bit intimate for a while, and she admits that she loves that they're so honest with each other. And speaking of honesty, that's when Andre admits to seeing Ashley before they left for their trip. She mentions how Ashley ended her engagement and offered herself to him, basically throwing herself at him. But Danny's surprised by this, and Andre's glad the situation happened because it made him see how much he wanted Danny. And there's no comparison between what he used to feel for Ashley to what he has with Danny now. Because what we have is real, and it isn't just a rebound situation, which is an interesting thing to state considering that's exactly why these two ended up drunk and married in the first place, when Bill set up those boundaries because of Hailey, and Andre was told that, hey, I found my person in Derek. So they went back to their friends with benefits thing, got hitched in LA and in Vegas, and the rest is history. But that's when Danny mentions how I choose you, but I feel bad for Ashley. And Andre talks about what happened between the two of them involving lying about his paralysis. But Danny doesn't judge Derek for it. And they end up having sex. And afterwards they talk about their real rings, something unique and unconventional. And that's when Danny calls her jeweler friend in LA, and they make an appointment for later in the afternoon, and they decide to make love until then. Lucky dog. Now, we go over to the office, and Caroline brings an herbal tea for Bill, who's upset about it, and Tomas is working on a case on the other side of the table. And Caroline hopes that he appreciates his wife's dedication to keeping him healthy. Tomas seems stressed, and Caroline's mentioned that you might want to do some herbal tea yourself. It is calming for the nerves. So that's when he takes off to work on a brief in his own office, and Caroline kind of has a heart-to-heart with Bill. She mentions how I used to see how you treated your ex-wife for granted, and she put up with it. But Hailey, she's a bit different, more of a spitfire. I doubt that she'll stick around and allow you to treat her the same way. Now, that's when we go over to the country club, and Hailey finishes up her breakfast when she notices Izaiah and Jacob at a nearby table. And that's when Jacob, this is funny because Jacob pretty much gives his brother the rundown on who to look out for. And Hailey is one of those people. Basically, hey, steer clear of her. Okay? Just trust me on this. And then Kat goes over and talks to Hailey and notices that even this far into her time in the community, she's still not a part of the Fairmount Crest Circle. And that's when she's like, you know what? How about an olive branch? I scratch your back, you scratch mine. You give me some information, maybe I can help out with getting you acclimated to the community here. So she asks how a family stealing homewrecker's mind works. Hailey claims she doesn't know because she just fell in love with Bill. And that's when Kat wants help in stopping Eva from making further moves on Tomas. And that's when Hailey finds this amusing and honestly tells some truth. Happy men don't stray. So what you need to do is fix the cracks in your relationship before it allows room for another girl to slip in. Kat thanks her and then leaves. She says hi to Jacob as she heads out, while Jacob wonders why those two were talking in the first place. So Izaiah brings up Eva and Kat's tension, and Jacob warns him to be cautious around that one too. So it's funny, you got these two women into Izaiah, and he just got issued warnings by his brother. Stay away from him, I'm telling you. So once he leaves, Hailey decides to slither up like the snake she is to riz up Jacob's brother. And he tells her that with all the connections, we're practically family. And she's, upset by that, comment, which is true because, well, you were formerly Naomi's best friend. Then you had an affair with her father, causing her parents to get a divorce. Now you're married to her father, making you, her former best friend, her mother in law. I'm sorry, her stepmom. And by extension, mother in law to my brother Jacob. So yeah, we're practically family. And she mentions how she used to live in her car before she married Bill. And I never thought it would happen, between us. And she thinks it sounds shallow, but he tells her, oh, no, it's not. And he mentions how he works with kids at a university, and she asked him about, the career. And he says that, hey, I've never been a saint myself back in the day. And she mentions that, well, I could use a friend, but I have a bit of a reputation. She thought that since she's been misjudged, he might be open to getting to know her for himself. Ooh, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Stay away, Izaiah. And he admits that he's the last person to judge someone else for their past, so that's when he leaves, and she stares at him as he goes, clearly interested. Now, that's when her cousin Randy calls, and she mentions that she's working on a side venture, but he says, hey, keep things on track, okay? We got a mission. Because Joey's questioning him because there's some former footage from the casino, not from our backroom meetups, but from the casino floor at the roulette table. He got some new facial recognition technology, and this was before the miscarriage. Hailey's messed up, but Randy's like, look, Joey's not going to drop this, and you need to come up with a better cover story, okay? So that's when we go back inside the country club, and Tomas is there with Kat, and she tells him that moving forward, she'll try to be more chill. She mentions about her chat with her dad and Eva becoming a valued part of the family, and she realizes that she needs to work through it and is considering talking to her mom about it. So she's managed to forgive Kat, but just because my mom has, it's going to be difficult for me to do the same, but I hope I'll be able to. Side note, she looks adorable in that blue. Now, Tomas is appreciative of the sentiment, and Kat asks if this means that they're building something together. They're still building towards something together, and he says that we are. And speaking of, my doctor cleared me for sex, so she's like, I want it right now. I'm thinking, are they going to the closet again? So we go over to the diner, and Leslie is showing Eva a box, and her daughter hopes it's not a new wig, but Leslie mentions how she doesn't need disguises anymore. And it's the ticket to high society, and it's all the Winterfest tickets. She ensures her daughter that only those who have her seal of approval will get these envelopes. And that's when Jan and Mona arrive, but of course Mona gives her ex-friend the cold shoulder, saying Leslie believes Mona will come around eventually. So that's when Mona talks to Jan and yet again reiterates, I will never be able to forgive that woman for what she did. And Jan reminds her that, well, Leslie was never charged with any crime, and, well, she wants to give her the benefit of the doubt. And that's when Mona gives Jan a look when she says she knows everyone's capable of doing terrible things. And that's when Mona says that they never really knew Leslie when they were her friend. And that's when Jan wonders if they know everyone and groans about thinking that Derek was a great guy until he lied about faking his paralysis to hold on to her daughter. And as they're chatting it up, that's when Leslie watches from her booth and is envious that she's not in on the gossip, which is a good throwback because, yeah, these three used to be the trio of gossip of life behind the gates whenever they met up at the diner. Now, that's when Jan tells Mona about Ashley being interested in Andre, but is unable to compete with Danny Dupree. And it's funny that you would say this considering you're the one who deterred her from being with Andre in the first place. So once they chat about Winterfest, Mona said that she would take Jan if she could, and that's when Leslie continues to overhear or try to chime in on the conversation via, eavesdropping. And Eva complains she's not talking to her because obviously she's paying attention to the women across the room. And she does tell Eva that she met with Izaiah briefly, and wow, you do have good taste in finding men. He's a fine specimen and sounds like a decent man. But now that we have our own money, you can find a man to love rather than think about how much he makes. And that's when Izaiah meets with Eva at the bar of the diner. They discuss how he and Jacob are trying to reconnect after being apart for so many years because sibling relationships can be a complicated thing. Eva can agree with this, and Izaiah thinks it's more complicated when a girl is stealing her sister's man. So Eva admits that, hey, me and Tomas are friends now, but we did hook up, and it did happen when he and Kat were having issues. And it's not like I planned it. Really? Okay, Hailey. And that's when Izaiah, just like he said to Hailey, I'm not judging you. And she mentions how, well, they're reunited now, and he knows that people off limits can be more attractive. And Eva mentions how she tried to ignore the chemistry because of Kat, but now she's interested in Izaiah. And he suggests they go somewhere alone where they can discuss this more in detail. Bro, your brother, you know what? You know what? Forget it. But hey, it's like he just said. He said to Eva, it's like people off limits are more attractive. This guy. So from there, Leslie's in her booth looking at the list of people who need an invite, and she doesn't like Anastasia, who is too into herself, so she's not giving her a ticket. And that's when she goes over to Mona and Jan's table to give Jan a ticket, and she thanks her for being a wonderful friend. Jan is thrilled, but Mona gives her a side eye, and Leslie explains that I'm in charge of the guest list, which Mona is shocked by and says that she's already going to be there anyway. And that's when Leslie tells her to go ahead and hang on to the past, but I'm choosing not to look at her sour face anyway. And she goes back over to her booth and takes a call from her mom, Peaches, and she's like, oh my God, what's going on? So we go over to the food court area, and Jacob meets with his father-in-law, and they agree to have dinner again since the country club dinner went so well. And that's when Bill sips on his coffee and tells Jacob to keep it quiet from Hailey and the rest of the healthy diet brigade. Oh yeah, that's right, because he was in his feelings about that dang herbal tea. Now, that's when Jacob mentions the message on Hailey's phone about the birth control, and he doesn't think that Bill's wife is being honest, which Bill smirks at. And I know all about it. And you need to let Naomi know that Hailey's hormones are out of whack, and the doctor prescribed the pills to help get them back on track. And it's funny that you two are still hell-bent on hating on my new wife. What you need to do is consider how things are going in your own marriage, because I felt the tension between you and my daughter at the dinner the other night. So Jacob says, like, we're working through our issues. And Bill asks if Jacob cheated, and he's like, oh no, that's your MO. And I'm not going to violate my wife's confidence. And that's pretty much the end of the episode. So yeah, this was a good episode. Good way to start out the week. But folks, just thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great week. I will talk to you in the next upload.